My family stole $25,000 for my irresponsible sister. Now she abandoned her son for drugs. But when they demanded I sacrifice my career to raise him, my answer left them broken. I'm 21 years old, studying civil engineering at a university 3 hours from where I grew up. And basically, I've gone 2 years without talking to my parents beyond happy birthday or Merry Christmas messages. You know, the bare minimum. The reason is complicated, but also super simple at the same time. And I guess I need to tell it because what happened a few weeks ago still has me up at night, wondering if I'm the bad guy in this story. Spoiler. I don't think I am, but my parents definitely think so. Let's start from the beginning. I have an older sister, Jessica, 3 years older than me, to be exact. We grew up in the same house, but honestly, it was like living in two completely different worlds. Jessica was always the troublemaker. Since middle school. I remember when I was 11 years old, she was already in trouble. Like suspensions for fighting with other girls, horrible grades, coming home late, smelling weird. My parents always had this tired expression when they talked. To Jessica's teachers. You know? Resigned to the fact that's just how she was, and that's it. I had to be the good one. The one who got good grades without being asked. The one who didn't cause problems. It's not like my parents directly demanded it from me. But let's say that after so many years dealing with Jessica, when I came home with an A in math, I barely got a good job while they ate because they were too tired arguing about the latest thing my sister had done. Things with Jessica went from bad to worse. They expelled her from high school in her senior year. Something related to drugs in her locker. They never told me all the dramatic details because I was only 15 at the time, and my parents thought I shouldn't know those things. She ended up getting her equivalency but basically didn't do anything productive after that. Part-time jobs that lasted 2 months max, constant parties, boyfriends who came and went, and my parents there financing everything while she lived at home without paying rent or anything. Meanwhile, I worked summers from age 16, saving every penny for college because I knew my parents didn't have much money. Or so I thought. When I was 18, in my senior year of high school, something happened that completely changed my life. I got my acceptance letter to my dream university, one of the best in the country for civil engineering, with a partial scholarship that covered 60% of tuition. I was euphoric. Literally euphoric. I had worked so hard for this, studying until 2 in the morning, being president of the math club, all that stuff. I had saved up $25,000 from years of summer jobs, babysitting, waitressing, whatever. With the scholarship and my savings, I could cover the first 2 years no problem, and then I'd look for more scholarships or student loans for the rest. I got home with the letter and showed it to my parents. I remember that moment perfectly because my mom barely looked up from her phone and said something like, "That's nice, honey." And my dad was watching TV. I had just achieved something huge and they didn't even get excited with me. I should have seen it coming, honestly, but I was so happy I didn't care. I told them I was going to start the enrollment and housing procedures, that I had everything planned, that my savings plus the scholarship covered everything. That's when my dad told me they needed to talk to me about something important. They sat across from me at the kitchen table with that serious face parents make when they're going to tell you something they know you won't like. My mom started by saying they were very proud of me, blah blah blah, but that a situation had come up with Jessica. Turns out my sister, who was 21 at the time, was pregnant. Her boyfriend Brandon, a 3-year-old guy who didn't have a stable job and honestly always gave me bad vibes, had gotten her pregnant, and according to my parents, the two of them wanted to start a family and settle down. I'm sitting there thinking, okay, and what does that have to do with me? Until my dad dropped the bomb. They said they had found a perfect apartment for Jessica and Brandon, close to where Brandon worked when he worked, in a decent neighborhood, 2 bedrooms, ideal for starting a family. The problem was the down payment. They needed $30,000 for the down payment and they didn't have it. But I did. My dad literally told me, "Your sister needs you now. You can wait a year or 2 to go to college, work, and save again. But Jessica needs stability for that baby." I sat there processing what they were saying and honestly couldn't believe it. I asked them if they were serious. If they were really asking me to give them the money I had saved for years, the money that was literally my future, to buy an apartment for my sister who had never been responsible for anything in her life. My mom started with the emotional speech that Jessica was going to be a mother, that she needed our support, that family helps each other, that I was young and would have many opportunities. I told them no, obviously. I told them that money was mine, that I had earned it, that my sister could rent something cheaper or live with them until Brandon got a stable job. My dad got angry, told me I was being selfish, to think about the baby, that Jessica had made mistakes, but this was her chance to change. We argued for hours, literally hours. Me crying, telling them it was unfair. That always Jessica first. Always Jessica needs this or that. My mom crying, saying, how could I be so cold to my own sister? In the end, I went to my room and locked the door. I thought that was it. You know? That they had tried, and that was that. But like 2 weeks later, I went to check my savings account. The one I had opened when I was 16 and where I deposited everything. And it was empty. Completely empty. I called the bank frantically and they told me my parents, who were co-holders of the account because we opened it when I was a minor, had withdrawn all the money 3 days earlier. I collapsed. I literally sat on my bedroom floor and couldn't stop crying. I went downstairs and confronted my parents and my dad, without even looking at me, said it was for my own good, that someday I would understand, that we were giving Jessica the opportunity to be a good mother and that was more important. I didn't speak to them for weeks. I lived in that house but didn't say a word to them. I graduated from high school and they went to the ceremony, but I didn't even greet them afterward. Jessica didn't even go because she had pregnancy nausea. Obviously. I talked to the university and explained my situation, without giving them all the dramatic details, but basically telling them I had lost my savings. They helped me get a student loan to cover what was missing after the scholarship, and I also applied to every work-study program that existed. I left that house as soon as I turned 19. 2 months before classes started, I found a tiny apartment. Well, more like a studio the size of a shoebox, but it was mine and I could afford it working part-time. My mom cried when I left, saying it was too soon, that I could stay there and they wouldn't charge me rent. I told her I'd rather live in a cardboard box than stay in that house. The last thing I saw before leaving was my room, which my mom had already started painting yellow. She told me they were going to turn it into the baby's room when Jessica came to visit with Noah. That's what they were going to name the baby. I said nothing. Just left. The first months at university were super tough. I'm not going to lie. Between the classes that were super demanding, the 2 0-hour-a-week job at the campus library, and the fact that I was basically alone without my family's support, there were days I thought about giving up. But every time I thought about calling my parents or going back, I remembered how they had betrayed me and kept going. Jessica had Noah like in November of that year. My mom sent me photos by text, like, look at your nephew. And I only responded that he looked healthy. Nothing more. I didn't go meet him, didn't visit the famous apartment they bought with my money. My mom told me I was being childish, that I had to get over the resentment. Easy to say when she wasn't the one who had lost years of savings, right? 2 years passed like that. 2 years where I talked to my parents like 3 times a year. Christmas, my birthday, theirs if I remembered. I graduated with honors after my 2nd year. Got a really good paid internship for the summer. Things were improving. I had friends, was dating a guy from my structures class. Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine and I was building it without them. Honestly, I had made peace with the fact that my relationship with my family was basically non-existent. It didn't hurt as much as at the beginning. It was more like resignation. You know what I mean? Like 3 weeks ago, a normal Tuesday, I was in the library studying for a super important soil mechanics exam that was worth 40% of my final grade. I had my phone on silent like always when I study. When I came out like at 10 at night, I had 23 missed calls from my parents. 23. Plus like 15 messages saying it was an emergency, to call immediately, that they needed to talk to me urgently. My first thought was that someone had died, my grandmother or something. I called my mom with my heart in my throat, and she answered on the first ring, screaming, "Where the hell was I? Why wasn't I answering? That they needed me to come home immediately." I asked her what was going on, and she just cried, saying I had to come, that it was about Jessica. I thought Jessica had been in an accident or something. I asked her directly if Jessica was okay, if she was alive, because honestly, with all those calls, I thought the worst. My mom said Jessica was fine physically, but that she had done something terrible and they needed me to come home to help. I told her I had an exam the next day that I couldn't miss, that it was worth almost half my grade, and that after the exam I could go over the weekend. My mom started screaming that I always put school first, that my family needed me. How could I be so cold? I hung up because honestly, I couldn't deal with that drama the night before my exam. My dad called me like 10 minutes later. He sounded calmer but just as urgent. He told me Jessica had left Noah at their house, that she had knocked on the door, left the kid with a backpack and a note, and had left. That they had been calling her for hours and she wasn't answering, that Brandon wasn't answering either, and that they needed me to come help with Noah because they couldn't take care of a 2.5-year-old kid alone. I told them the same thing, that after my exam I'd go. But my dad lost his patience and told me what was the point of everything they'd given me if I was going to be so ungrateful. That university wasn't more important than family. I almost laughed, like everything they gave me was stealing my savings. But I didn't say anything. I just told him I'd see them Saturday and hung up. I took my exam the next day, but honestly couldn't concentrate well. All night, I kept thinking about what the hell Jessica had done now, about that kid who wasn't to blame for anything, about my parents who called me after 2 years of barely talking only because they needed me for something. Friday, after classes, I drove the 3 hours to my parents' house. I hadn't been there in 2 years. It looked the same, except now there were toys in the yard and a high chair in the kitchen that I could see from the window. I knocked on the door and my mom opened it. She looked terrible, tired, with dark circles, hair messed up. She hugged me tight, and I just stood there, not knowing what to do. She pulled me inside and there was Noah, a small boy with curly hair like Jessica, playing with some blocks in the living room. He looked at me with those big eyes and said hi, and honestly it broke my heart a little because it was obvious he had no idea what was happening. My dad came out of the kitchen and went straight to the point, as always. He gave me the note Jessica had left. I read it standing there in the middle of the living room. It said something like, "Mom, Dad, I can't do this. I can't be a mother. I made a mistake. Noah will be better off with you. Brandon and I need time to fix our things." But at the end it said, "And I know Caroline can help. She's always been the responsible one. She can take care of Noah better than me." I stood there looking at that note, unable to believe what I was reading. My sister had literally abandoned her son and somehow thought I was going to be her replacement. I asked them if they had talked to Jessica, if they knew where she was. My mom said she had finally answered a message saying she and Brandon needed some time, that they were going through difficult things, not to look for them. I asked them what kind of difficult things, and that's when they looked at each other with that face of, "We don't want to tell you, but we have to." My dad said Jessica and Brandon had drug problems, that they'd been into it for like a year, that they had tried to help them, even pay for rehab, but it hadn't worked. That CPS almost took Noah from them like 6 months ago, because neighbors reported they left the kid alone for hours, that the house was in horrible conditions, but that Jessica promised they would change. I sat down because I felt like my legs weren't going to hold me. Everything was starting to make sense. Why my parents had been so quiet these 2 years. Why they never mentioned Jessica in the scarce messages we exchanged. I asked them why they hadn't told me anything, and my mom said they didn't want to worry me, that they thought they could handle the situation. I told them, and now what? What did they plan to do with Noah? My dad said that's why they needed me there. Basically, they wanted me to drop out of college and come back home to take care of Noah. Just like that. My mom said I could finish my degree later, that Noah needed me now, that they were too old to raise a small child. My dad is like 56, and my mom 54, and that I was the only option. I sat there, staring at them, unable to believe what I was hearing. I asked them if they were crazy, if they really thought I was going to throw away 3 years of college, my summer internship, my entire future, to raise my sister's son that she abandoned. My dad said it was temporary, just until Jessica recovered and could take care of Noah again. I told them no. Just no. To call CPS, to put Noah in the system if they couldn't take care of him, but that I wasn't going to sacrifice my life for Jessica's decisions. My mom started crying, saying, how could I be so cruel? That he was my nephew, that he had my blood, that I couldn't let him go into the system. I told her it's horrible what was happening, but it wasn't my responsibility, that I hadn't decided to have a child and abandon him. My dad got angry and said I had always been selfish, that since the money thing I had shown my true colors, that family was more important than any career. That's when I exploded. I yelled at them everything I had kept inside for 2 years. That they had robbed me, literally robbed me, of my years of savings. That they had given everything to Jessica always, that it was never enough, that she destroyed everything she touched, and they kept rescuing her. That they had asked me to sacrifice my future for Jessica's apartment, and now they were asking me to sacrifice it again for her son. Where were those calls when I graduated with honors? When I got the internship? When I turned 20? And they didn't even send me a message until 11 at night. That they only called me when they needed me to clean up Jessica's messes. My mom said I didn't understand what it was to be a mother, that someday when I had kids I would understand. I told her if that was being a mother, protecting the irresponsible child at the expense of the responsible one, then I never wanted to be one. Noah started crying from the yelling, and that calmed me down a bit. I crouched down and told him everything was okay, that the adults were just talking. He looked at me with those teary eyes and said, "I'm hungry." And I realized it was like 8 at night and he probably hadn't had dinner. I asked my mom if there was anything to eat, and she said she hadn't had time to cook with all the chaos. I ordered pizza, a plain one and a pepperoni because I didn't know what Noah liked. While we waited for the pizza, I played with him for a while. He's a good kid. I can't deny that. Sweet, quiet, a little shy. He asked me if I was his mom's sister, and I told him yes. He asked me when his mom was coming back, and I didn't know what to tell him. I told him I didn't know, but I was sure she missed him a lot. It was a lie, obviously. If Jessica missed him, she wouldn't have abandoned him. But what do you tell a 2.5-year-old kid? After Noah ate and my parents took him to sleep in what was my room, the three of us sat down to talk again. I told them I understood the situation was horrible, but I couldn't be the solution. That I was 21 years old, that I was in the middle of my degree, that I had an important internship in the summer, that it simply wasn't possible. My dad asked then what did I propose? And I told them the truth. To call CPS, to seek temporary legal custody of Noah, to try to locate Jessica and force her to get help or give up her parental rights, but that I wasn't going to be part of that beyond visiting them once in a while. Like any normal aunt, my mom said he was their grandson, that they weren't going to hand him over to the system. I told them then they would have to take care of him, that I could help financially if they needed. I could send some money each month, from my internship, but I wasn't coming back. My dad said, money wasn't the problem, that the problem was they physically couldn't handle a small child 24 hours, that my mom had back problems, that he still worked full-time, that Noah needed constant attention. I told them there were daycares, nannies, assistance programs for situations exactly like this. The conversation went in circles for hours. Them insisting it was my family duty. Me insisting it wasn't. Finally, like at midnight, I told them I was leaving, that I had said what I had to say, and my answer was no. My mom grabbed my arm and told me, if I left like that, if I left Noah, she would never forgive me. I told her to add that to the list of things she didn't forgive me for. Apparently, my dad said he was disappointed in me, that he never thought his daughter could be so cold. I told him I learned the coldness from them, from how they treated me 2 years ago. I left that house crying, drove like 20 minutes and had to stop, because I couldn't see well. I felt horrible, guilty, angry, frustrated, all together. Part of me thought what kind of person refuses to help a small child. But the other part knew that if I gave in now, it was going to be like that forever. I was going to be the one who fixed Jessica's problems. The one who sacrificed her life for other people's decisions. And I couldn't do that. Not again. I got back to my apartment Saturday afternoon. Sunday, my mom sent me a long message saying they had talked to a lawyer and were going to apply for temporary custody of Noah, that CPS was involved now because they had no choice, that she hoped I could live with my conscience, knowing her grandson was in the system because of me. I responded that Noah was in the system because of Jessica and Brandon, not me, and that I hoped everything worked out for Noah because he didn't deserve any of this. 3 weeks have passed since then. According to what my mom told me, in another message, CPS granted temporary custody to my parents after confirming that Jessica and Brandon weren't fit to be parents right now. Something about finding them in a house with more people using drugs and that they're basically being investigated. My parents are officially raising Noah with CPS supervision and have to take the kid to therapy and things like that. Jessica hasn't tried to contact me, not even to insult me or anything, and honestly, I don't know where she is or what she's doing, and at this point, I don't really care. I got my internship for the summer. It pays really well, and it's with a super recognized construction company. I'm going to be able to save quite a bit, and maybe even pay part of my student loans before graduating. Things with the guy from my class ended because he got an internship in another state, but we're good. No drama. My grades are fine. I got an 87 on that soil mechanics exam, which was a miracle considering everything. I still think about Noah. I wonder if he'll be okay, if he'll understand why his mom left, if my parents will really be able to take care of him, or if they'll end up calling me again in a few months. Part of me feels guilty. I'm not going to lie, because he's an innocent kid and I technically could help. But the other part, the part that worked like crazy saving since age 16, the part that watched her parents steal her future to give it to her irresponsible sister, that part knows I did the right thing. I can't keep being my family's plan B, the one who fixes the messes others make. I have to live my life, you know? And maybe that makes me selfish according to my parents, but I think it makes me a survivor. Last week, my mom sent me a picture of Noah with a drawing he made at daycare. It's of a house with 3 people, my parents and him, I guess. There's no mention of Jessica or Brandon or me. Maybe for him that's his family now. And honestly, I hope my parents can give him the stability he needs. I didn't respond to the message, but I saved the picture. I don't know why. I just did. I guess this is my life now. A broken family that only contacts me when they need something, a sister lost in drugs who ruined her life and almost ruined mine, and a nephew who will probably grow up without really knowing me. It's not the happy ending you expect when you're in high school dreaming about the future, but it is what it is, and I'm learning to be okay with that. One day at a time.